Greetings and welcome back to Room 303 and our chats with Emily as we are calling our readings through the poetry of Emily Dickinson. We're in the Johnson edition. We turn now to poem 786, Severer Service of Myself. Severer is used only once in all of her poetry, and it will be here. We are back to poem 784, Bereaved of all I went abroad, no less bereaved was I upon a new peninsula. We're back to the death of a pal, to the loss of somebody close to Emily. Emily, the great poet of, can we call it mental anguish? I mean, she is a poet that looks right in the face at mental anguish, at pain, at suffering, and asks some very difficult questions about how do you get beyond that kind of mental pain or that mental suffering. Now, our assumptions are that you've been following our stuff at learnstrong.net. Down that left-hand side, Chats with Emily's our playlist. Hopefully you've worked through our set of introductory comments as well as the preceding 785 poems we just finished with 785. They have a little odor. And if you've done that reading with us, you will be able to place this poem within the context of a good number of other poems that we've already seen and many more that we'll come to. In fact, we're going to finish this lecture with 1732, one of Emily's most famous poems. Now, the scholar Herberger has called this poetry writing as a kind of self-therapy, and will go on to say it this way: nothing else written by Dickinson, and now he's referencing specifically this poem, so vividly evokes her lamp-lit bedroom, laborious nights, and disciplined effort to quiet her nerves. We're going to see the word nerves in this poem. Not stopping there, however, the poem goes on to admit the failure of her program. She'll say affliction would not be appeased, and she remains in darkness. I think it is significant that she's going to admit, she's honest, she's going to admit it isn't so easy to get over the pain or the suffering psychically that we sometimes grapple with. This is how she says it. Severer service of myself I hastened to demand to fill the awful vacuum your life had left behind. I worried nature with my wheels when hers had ceased to run, when she had put away her work, my own had just begun. I strove to weary brain and bone, to harass, to fatigue the glittering retinue of nerves, vitality to clog. To some dull comfort those obtain who put a head away they knew the hair to, and forget the color of the day. Affliction would not be appeased. The darkness braced as firm as all my stratagem had been, the midnight to confirm. No drug for consciousness can be. Alternative to die is nature's only pharmacy for being's malady. It is interesting that she'll begin with this phrase, I strove, as in the struggle. We commented on the significance of the King James Bible that she loves so much. That famous story where Jacob will wrestle with an angel, that striving or that wrestling, she says, I strove. You'll remember that formulation from 226, from 629. We'll see it again in 858. To what? Weary brain and bone. Look at the word choices in this poem. It's quite compelling. To weary brain and bone. Bone and nerves will take us back to 244. It's easy to work when the soul is at play, but when the soul is in pain, the hearing him put his playthings up makes work difficult then. It's simple to ache in the bone or the rind, but gimlets among the nerve, mangle daintier, terrible, like a panther in the glove. You'll remember when we did that poem together, her comment of that poem is her comment of this poem. It's not so easy to just walk away from true mental anguish. She says, it was service I tried to myself. And the service takes us back to 779. The service without hope is tenderness. I think you'll remember her use of that word service. Severer service of myself. By the way, hear all the S sounds, these hard sibling sounds in this poem. I hastened to demand to fill the awful vacuum. I think awful is a key word of a poem like this. Your life had left behind. Notice, we have no idea who she's writing to, but she's writing to them as if somehow they can hear what she has to say. Assuming maybe immortality, assuming maybe that there is something on the other side, there is some consciousness on the other side. She'll get to consciousness in a little bit. But then notice, she goes from the service and from the hastening to the worry. But notice it's, I worried nature. Notice here, nature comes back at the very end of the poem, and nature's only pharmacy. Nature, capitalized. With my wheels, in other words, the wheels of thought, the wheels turning, when hers had ceased to run. Now, it isn't clear. Are we talking about the one who's passed? Or are we talking about nature? Had ceased to run. When she had put away her work, that is to say, of course, the burial. Notice her and work both capitalized. My own had just begun. In other words, it's interesting that we have funerals because, of course, the person who is dead doesn't need a funeral. They are dead. What would be the point of a funeral for a corpse? There is no point. The funeral is not for the dead. The funeral is for the living who are dying. By virtue of their passing, the living who are dying have to grapple with what? Well, not just the death of the individual who has passed, but what? Their own death. As we have said many times in 303, you have never met a 200-year-old person. Which means what? Right. Right. Everyone gets to swing at the park, but only for a few minutes. And every child knows they never want to go to the band. It's time to go to the band. No, I want to keep swinging. No, honey, you can't swing at the park forever. From a young age, they were teaching you. You only get to do this thing called living for a while. And when you lose the people who are closest to you, either through death or broken relationships or whatever, there's a vacuum that is left, she speaks of. The awful vacuum. Well, what do you do with that? Well, obviously, she says, I did my best to try to get beyond whatever the vacuum was. She says, I strove, you'll remember this formulation from 226 and 629, we'll see it again in 858. I strove to weary brain and bone. In many ways we are back to poem 784, aren't we? Bereaved of all I went abroad. Brain and bone. And again, this reading of 244, I think, can come to mind when she uses this idea of bone or rind. In other words, at the very heart of our very essence. To harass, to fatigue. She says, I tried to just wear myself down. Intellectually, spiritually, emotionally. To just kind of get to a place where I was numb. But she says, the glittering retinue of nerves, we're back to the nerve of 244, vitality to clog. She says, I tried. It just didn't work for me. But she says, for some it does work. To some dull comfort those obtain, who put a head away. In other words, get rid of the photographs, get rid of the memory of the individual. They knew the hair, too, and forget the color of the day. In other words, there are people who are capable of moving beyond, the memory of those that they have lost. Obviously, Emily is suggesting, I'm not so good at this. She says, I'm not so good at forgetting in this regards. Affliction would not be appeased. In other words, I couldn't get over it. The darkness, notice capitalized, braced as firm as all my stratagem had been, the midnight to confirm. In other words, she said, I hoped maybe in the nighttime, in the sleep. Any of us that have lost somebody close, we know what this is all about. When it gets quiet and it gets silent, that's when it seems it gets the loudest for those of us who are trying to process this kind of midnight of the soul. Right? And of course, it is true, St. John of the Cross called it the dark night of the soul. She says, no drug, we're back to the cups of artificial drowse of 784, no drug for consciousness. Now, we've talked about her use of this word consciousness in 21 of her poems. You'll remember it when we did 384, as she talked about consciousness. No rack can torture me, my soul at liberty. Behind this mortal bone there knits a bolder one. Again, we're back to the bone. You cannot prick with saw, nor pierce with scimitar. Two bodies therefore be. Bind one the other fly. The eagle of his nest no easier divest and gain the sky than mayest thou. Except thyself may be thine enemy. Captivity is consciousness. So's liberty. When we get to 822, we're going to come back to her use of this word consciousness again. And we'll remind ourselves, this consciousness that is aware of neighbors and the sun will be the one aware of death, and that itself alone is transversing the interval experience between, in most profound experiment appointed unto men, how adequate unto itself its property shall be, itself unto itself, and none shall make discovery. Adventure most unto itself the soul condemned to be, attended by a single hound, its own identity. She says, no drug for consciousness can be found. When we get to 787 next, she'll say it this way, such is the force of happiness, the least can lift a ton assisted by its stimulus, who misery sustain, no sinew can afford, the cargo of themselves too infinite for consciousness's slow capabilities. No drug for consciousness can be alternative to die. In other words, she says, I'm afraid the only way I'm ever going to live this thing down, I'm ever going to get beyond this pain, this mental anguish, is death itself. She says, death is nature's only pharmacy. What an amazing line. Pharmacy, by the way, only used once in all her poetry, and it's here. Death is nature's only pharmacy for being's malady. You'll remember 686, guys, when we played that game of 686, just to bring it back in memory. They say that time assuages. Time never did assuage, and actual suffering strengthens as sinews do with age. Time is a test of trouble, but not a remedy, if such it proved. It proved, too, there was no malady. The idea of this notion of learning to deal with loss is probably best summarized when we hit 1732. You guys we'll come back to this poem a number of times. Maybe, is it maybe Emily's most famous poem about death and loss? My life closed twice before its close. It yet remains to see if immortality unveil a third event to me. So huge, so hopeless to conspire as these that twice befell. Parting is all we know of heaven and all we need of hell. Okay, what are we going to do with a poem like this at 2A? Well, I think her argument is sometimes there really isn't a remedy for great pain, great suffering. At 2B, notice word choice in this poem, the nouns and the verbs especially. Hastened, demand, worry, strove, weary, harass, fatigue, clog, affliction. You could make the argument, those are all powerful words for the notion of pain and suffering. At 3A, well, of course, all of the poems of Emily that deal with suffering and pain, we started with 784. Of course, 1732 for sure. Finally, at 3B, what is for you the worst suffering that you've ever had to wrestle with? And how are you able to get through it? Maybe Emily's challenging you. Thank you.